All right, welcome back everyone. Today we're going to start working on the garden. So in a previous video, I kind of mentioned getting started on this, what we were going to do, and that we came down here and did a few things just to check on the garden, see how things were. Of course, the wind had blown all of our tarps out of place, but at least they're still attached at one end of the garden. That's helpful. And I had noted that the heavy rains had seemed to have washed away wonderful soil and left us with a bunch of sand. That was just what was mixed in with the horse manure compost that we had delivered and put on here last year. But lucky for us, it turns out, I guess it just kind of brought the sand to the surface, because as you dig down, and actually this is kind of a thick layer, but other parts of the garden down that way, it's like paper thin layer of sand on top. And then as we dig down, we still have our nice rich soil compared there to the sand. So thankfully, I'm not going to have to do as much soil amending as I thought, because I thought it was this entire garden and that maybe we made a mistake in having some wonderful fresh manure delivered last year. But it's not as bad as it seemed. This is pretty dark right here too. So let's see, I just barely scraped off the top. So it's pretty good. We do have a compost pile though, so what I'm going to start with today is just putting a thin layer of that down and working it into the soil gently. We'll see how far we get. I'd like to do at least this one whole row today. If I feel up to it, maybe we'll do 2 rows today, but this is a very long garden. I think 84, 86 feet long, something like that. And it's pretty warm out today actually, which is wonderful. I'm thankful for that, but it can be a little too hot, of course. So we do like a no-till method here. We don't want to completely plow everything under, and we don't need mountains and mountains of new soil brought into here either. My husband said, "Do you want me to bring bucketfuls down in the tractor?" And I said, "No, because then you're going to compact the soil," which happened last year when we were trying to form the garden fully for the first time, which is fine. You got to start somewhere. And this whole area was like that. The woods and the grass, which I left a layer of that along the edge for now, but whole ground was like that. So we did have to do that, but you don't want to do that every year and compact your soil right before you're going to plant in it. But now's a good time to amend the soil. It's one of a handful of good times that you could do it, trying to work it into life and everything and making time for it. But this is probably a good 5 to 6 weeks before I'm going to start planting anything. So it's going to give the soil time to rest, be ready, do its thing, hopefully produce us some fantastic crops this year. All right, I'm back with my wheelbarrow load. I just wanted to show you guys the compost. It could go a little bit longer technically to kind of further break down that straw, but that's really good. We're just going to, like I said, put a relatively thin layer on. And this is a combination of leaves in the fall, grass clippings, old straw from the chicken coop, and anything else that the forest wants to contribute to it, because we store it at the edge of one of our trails near the garden here. It's got a wonderful combination of water, air, good bacteria, earthworms. There were quite a few actually when I was getting shovelfuls of this that I found. I was trying not to slice them with the shovel, but that's always a really good sign. That means nature's in there doing what it's supposed to do. And our chickens will often go around the edges and stand up on top of the pile and scratch around in it too, and that further helps break things down and mix things up. About 6 weeks ago, I did have Dave take the tractor out in February when it was one of those warmish days. It was like 50 and sunny. I had him turn the pile over. We could get a little bit better of that mixing going on. So this is the good result of that. You can hear Dave over there with the chainsaw. He is working on another area. That would be the second garden that I wanted for the pie pumpkins specifically. I'm going to keep that and maybe one other crop over there. Something that needs to be kind of separate from the rest of this stuff so that it doesn't cross-pollinate. I'm not going all the way to the edge of the garden. That will be in part some walking space, but also it's darker right there, so I'm not as concerned about fully replenishing the nutrients over there. you're going to have to do it some manual way, or you want to do it manually because of the things I mentioned earlier, this is actually not a bad way to go. It's going pretty quick already. Also nice that I don't need a ton of this right now because our pile is pretty good size, but it's certainly not big enough to put like, you know, a 2 to 3 inch layer of this all over the entire garden. So it's good that we don't have to do that this year. The other thing I was planning on doing is I did order some trifecta from MI Gardener. That's one of the main places that I like to get my seeds, and the trifecta fertilizer that they offer is very good. I've used that I think for 3 seasons now and really liked it. So for the plants that need a little bit of extra attention, or they look like they might be struggling or something, I can sprinkle some of that in with their soil. So this is more of a tedious process and might be like, oh gosh, do you really have to do that? I mean, there are other ways to do this, but get this where I'm not stepping on it. I didn't really want to wait and order something, and also we spent a lot of money this week on buying home improvement types of things. But it looks more like a wide pitchfork with wider blades that come down to a point, and it's like this wide. And then you kind of just shove it in the ground, rock it a little bit, step back, shove it in the ground, rock it a little bit. And that's just to help aerate the soil gently and not do a big overturning plow of the dirt. And if you're doing something like this, amending the soil, then it helps make sure that the good stuff in the new soil doesn't just stay on top of your current soil. Is it a way to kind of seep down into the ground with the rest? That's why I said, not only is this just a big garden anyway, but this part is why I said I may not do this whole thing today, because if I get really tired of this repetitive motion, I may need a break from it and do something else. There's definitely plenty to do around here, but not completely overturning the soil is a huge part of the no-till method. You can go online if you don't already know about that, read about it, and watch some other YouTube videos on that specific topic. It's a good one. Like I said, the last year, because I'd gotten so sick at that time, June, I didn't plant nearly as much as I wanted to, but I still got quite a few things planted, and everything down here did amazing. That was after putting the horse manure on the garden, but really we just spread it out. Didn't really do much else beyond that. Definitely got warm, so I had to go change my shoes and have a big glass of water. I do also have a good gardening hat that keeps sun off my face. But I said before, and I'll say it again, that right now, since I don't have my own garden shed, all of my garden related stuff is just kind of spread out all over the house, the pole barn, the basement. And I know where the hat is at, but I was just in there taking a break just now. It's hard enough to just find a lot of the things that I wanted to bring back down and gather them all up without forgetting to bring something else too. So forgot the hat. There we go. Look at that. Again, a very good sign of healthy soil. Look at that. I hope the camera's getting it, maybe. Nice big earthworm. That's great. Get in there and keep doing your thing. You know, we want to go fishing too. We do both like to go fishing. We don't really have time these days. But if we wanted to go fishing, we do not need to buy any worms, I can tell you that. Let me cover you back up. Don't fry in the sunshine. We don't want that. Earthworms are excellent for soil. They are an indicator of healthy soil, but they help continue to enrich it and break things down and add to it, basically. It's compost, of course, that we made ourselves with our yard waste and our chicken coop waste. Does not have any odor. Just smells like very rich soil, which is wonderful. Okay, so entire row done in terms of bringing that fresh compost soil over. And obviously this other end here, when I got to a certain point, I went ahead and covered it back up, put our little stakes in to kind of hold it down. And then for this section, because it was so well secured on the other side, I didn't want to rip everything apart. So I kind of shoved some up under there. Didn't worry about stabbing the ground on that end. And then this took about 4 wheelbarrow loads to get that fresh compost down this whole row. So I will cover it up now. Then I'm going to take a little break, and then I'll show you guys the compost pile. So I wanted you guys to see the compost pile, of course. We put it down one of the trails. I think you've seen it a little bit from a distance in other videos, but we kind of cut down this tree that was here and left that as kind of a post marker. And there's another tree right here that's still alive and doing well. And we just have it between here. And it might not look like much, but that is because it's breaking down and doing what it's supposed to do, but it's quite a bit. So we'll go up closer and look at it too. So here is all of that nice, rich, usable soil. There's a lot of bug activity today because, of course, it's nice and warm and I'm stirring it around and they are loving it. But I'll scoop some for my next wheelbarrow load here and we'll see if we can, well, I know that we will find some earthworms and I'll show those to you. Having twigs in your compost pile is not a bad thing. It's good. The only problem is they take a long time to break down, and then they can be kind of a nuisance as you're digging around and planting things in the garden. So if they're larger, I just chuck them out. You can see some of the straw from that coop clean out that I did in February obviously isn't broken down. So if I find big chunks of that, I just toss it off to the side. It needs some air anyway. Turning the soil or turning your debris that's in your compost pile is really important anyway in order to help that breakdown process, in order to help it actually become soil and to make sure that it doesn't get too wet and slimy, because wet and slimy is kind of a different problem and not good for the soil, or for creating soil rather. But I still have plenty here that I can use for the purposes I'm trying to use it for today. Some people throw like kitchen scraps in their compost pile too. You can certainly do that if you want to. I did that when I was new to making compost and it didn't turn out to be a good thing, because then like old strawberries and old pieces of potato, I ended up having that grow in my compost pile. But the problem is, first of all, you don't want to eat it directly from the compost pile. That's a little bit not cleanest and healthiest for you. Also, they tend to just not grow right. And you might get, you know, a couple of plants, but you're not going to like get, there we go. Can you see that earthworm right there? Right there. Good stuff. Anyway, it's not going to be a good crop or plant for you to eat. It's not going to be very much. The other problem is if something doesn't necessarily grow in the compost pile, it will end up growing in your garden if you're putting this on there. And it's probably going to grow maybe in some places that you don't want it to, having things popping up all over the place. But some people don't mind that. And it's not necessarily a big problem or anything. It's just not something that I found to be real helpful when I was throwing my kitchen scraps in my compost at our prior house. So I did not do that with this one, and again with grass clippings, leaves, and the chicken straw from the coop. This has turned out to be really good compost, and we'll see how it does in the garden in terms of helping me grow things. Hi, girl. Yeah. So I mentioned before, the chickens will come and scratch around in here anytime we throw their gross bedding on top, or anytime we turn it. They're interested in it because they know there's been a change. Ooh, I think she just got an earthworm. There's plenty to go around. I don't mind sharing with you. Anyway, they know when we're doing something over here that it's probably going to be something good for them too. So they'll come and scratch around. Sometimes when we're here like this, but usually we'll just make a quick dump and walk away, and then they come over at their leisure and pick around, scratch around. That one needs to be broken up more. That one's not quite ready to go to the garden. Good. And when it comes to chicken feces, if that's part of your compost mixture, there can be lots of different things that go into compost, by the way. But when it comes to, your coop clean out chicken feces, there are some animal waste that can be directly put on the garden. For example, I believe rabbit waste is one. So if you're collecting that from pet rabbits, or if you have meat rabbits or something, that can technically go directly on a garden if you needed it to, or you can certainly add it to a compost pile. But chickens, you can't. And it's because of how corrosive. Oh, I hope we're getting that on video. Wow, that was a big earthworm, girl. Good job. You're eating well today. Anyway, you can't do that with chicken droppings. It's too corrosive. And you can probably imagine too, the smell of chicken poop is strong and awful, and it's got a lot of ammonia in it. So it does need to break down and have the components of the chicken feces all break down to turn back into something good rather than the nastiness that it is right after they've gotten rid of it. That's definitely something here with this straw. Let's stir that around a little bit more. Now, my husband stirs this around with the tractor because this is a very big pile, and it'd be a whole lot. I'm already breathing heavy right now. It'd be a lot of work to try to do this by hand. The first house that we owned, started gardening, we did that. There's a much smaller, we kind of made one kind of like people make them out of the pallets, but my husband just made a box, 4 sides, leave it open on the ground because you want that. And then he made a little door on the front of it. One of the sides was a door. And then we would fill it up and then just stir it around with a shovel. And then when it was ready, we would just open the door and be able to shovel it out into something. So that worked for that situation. But this is much bigger, a lot more of it. All right, we're on. So what did you want to tell them?
So I just wanted to tell you guys that if you find earthworms in the ground, dump them to your chickens. Yeah, definitely do that.
Because they love them, and it's a really healthy treat for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you want to feed a chicken like human food, okay, that's not gonna work. But if you definitely feed them like outside food, not like dead animal food, but like small bugs and insects like worms in the ground, definitely feed them to that. They might just find worms and insects on their own, but it's also normal. And if a chicken dies, that's normal. You don't have to feel bad and feel like that was your fault. It's just a normal random thing. So Mom's gonna put compost stuff in the garden, and then I'm gonna leave soon. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for helping me do an introduction, buddy. Yeah. Love you. Right. You gonna go now? Yeah. Bye. See you in another video. All right. So yesterday we had started this project. I got about halfway into the row. There were a lot of breaks, interruptions yesterday with other good things. I got to talk to a good friend and mentor of mine who lives in anher state. We were on the phone for a very long time. So this did not get quite as far as I wanted it to. But also, as you can probably tell, yesterday ended up being about 70, perfect sunlight, warm, wonderful. And today is like 45 and overcast. And it rained, just light rain throughout the night. So everything is still damp and wet and all of that. But it's a great day to be out when it's not too hot. Anyway, I'm going to finish this row today, kind of about where the camera is sitting in back. I got that far, and we'll see where we get, with or without those interruptions that come with life. I wanted to show you 2 rows fully completed now, and the landscaping fabric all tacked back down. That took far longer than really spreading the compost. I mean, the whole thing is a process. I think if you had no distractions and you made quick work of things, you could do this in 4 hours. Because I'm estimating it takes me about an hour to do each row. So for me, I have 4. I've got 2 done. There's 2 more, these mangled from the wind landscape cloth and soil amendment that's needed. So I'll figure out the correct length of our garden, and I will put that in the description. We write it down and then we forget again. But it's either 84 or 86 feet, and I forget how many feet wide. But anyway,
that's kind of how long it took. There was something else I wanted to show you guys though in terms of the fabric pins. And again, as you can probably guess, or if you don't know, this is meant for weed control. It's also meant for keeping moisture and nutrients in the soil longer. For example, with what happened here, the wind tore off the landscape cloth, and then the water from a lot of rain washed a lot of the nutrients to other places, right? Or washed them away completely. They could wash them outside of your garden. I think for the most part, my nutrients probably stayed in here, but it's probably more concentrated in certain areas of the garden than others now. But it helps hold things in place to some extent. It keeps the sun from really beating down on the soil and depleting your moisture in the summertime once you do have things growing in your garden. And of course, the big benefit is weed control. And as you can see already, these have been here for about a month already, even though we've had cold and a little bit of snow and stuff too still. But all of that greenery right there, that's just weeds. Came up last year as well. They died off and then they're just growing again, unfortunately. And that of course is between the landscape fabric. And that's part of what I wanted to talk to you guys about today too with this is I did overlap it, like you can see right here. I overlapped these and we've got the pins in, which we'll go over in more detail in a moment. But I overlapped it and this kind of still happened because with walking on it and just with the heat really, the heat kind of in the summer made it a little bit taut. And so it was pulling away from itself, or the two pieces that were slightly overlapped were pulling away from each other. And they're really good. Weeds are very efficient at growing and sustaining themselves with very little nutrients in the soil, very little sunlight, etc. So they grow fantastically all on their own in places we don't want them to. I wanted you guys to see how a couple of different styles of these pins work so that you can decide what is going to be best for you if you're going to do this, and kind of just some techniques for what we were just talking about with pinning a couple of pieces together. Obviously, when you do that, that's also efficient with the pins themselves. If I were to, cover this over, which we're going to do for the sake of an example here, then I can pin two pieces of fabric together and have to buy less of these. So that's great. But again, I'd say, so this is about an inch overlap that we're going to do here. That's about what I did last year. Some places I was like, oh, that's fine. We're about a centimeter overlapped. And no, that definitely wasn't good enough. We're going to do what we're going to do this year. I'm not worried about perfection, just better than it was. But I would say, to be safe, go 1.5 inches or 2 inches overlap. So, really tuck the sides. And when you're doing this, you want to pull it slightly taut, but don't over tighten, because like I said, you're going to be walking on this. People are going to be walking on it. It needs a little bit of room to move, but also not too much room to move so that it's like way too loose and you're going to trip on it while you're walking on it, or if it's too flappy, the wind will definitely catch it and pull itself away. So anyway, also a note on these, of the two, this one's my favorite. So we'll go over kind of the benefits of both, or what I've noticed experience-wise with them. But an easy way to pull up either one of these, because you'll be like, okay, my fingers hurt. This is really in the ground. Like, how do I get this out? Just pull up on the fabric a little bit. It loosens it for you, and then you can pull it out. And this is what this one looks like. This one versus this one here. This is very flexible, but it's also flimsy. Let's just call it what it is. This one is much firmer, sturdier. It looks, I mean, I don't know my metals, but basically you can tell this one is not as strong as this one. Also, when you're putting these down in the ground, you're inevitably going to hit stones, even if they're small stones. And this thing's just going to both of them are going to kind of get stuck. That will happen with both. The benefit of this one is you don't have two legs that you have to try and finagle around stones. You just have one. And for example, when I drive this down into the ground, into the fabric, it also pushes a lot easier. But if I ran into a stone and it stopped me, I just kind of pull back up a little bit, pull it right back out with the fabric still attached, and I can readjust it and pound it down a different way. So that's a benefit, that you don't have to try to get two legs around a bunch of stones, or one big stone, for example, where that's just not going to work as well. This one you can. Also, I love this design. It's obviously partly meant to hold the fabric down at the top, but it works so great for what I just did right there. You can put that in with your hand really easily or step on it with your foot. These, not so much. If you for some reason, they just don't. Like, they get stuck right about there, even though there's no stones, and like that hurts. I'm hurting my hand. So then you step on it, but you run the risk of bending it because it's flimsy metal. Of course, I believe these are cheaper than these, so that's partly why that. I think too, some of these fabrics will come with these. So if they do, great. It's kind of a package deal, so you're probably paying less overall because it comes as a package. So that's fine. They're certainly usable. They do still work. They're just not as easy to work with when you're the one installing them and putting them in as a gardener. Both of them rust. This last year was our first year using the fabric and the pins, and both of them have rust. For all of those reasons, I do prefer this one, but I'll put information for both of these in the description. I did just happen to I just found this in the basement, which yay, because I did need some. I needed them now and I don't have to order more. This is what this one is. Also, I just realized I had some good examples to go over for types of weed fabrics. Obviously, this is the one that we ended up using for the majority of the garden last year when I was trying to configure the garden and plant some things late along this side here. I had run out of the weed fabric and I didn't really want to spend money ordering it towards the end of the season. And it does come in these giant rolls and I didn't need that much of it along the side. So I think I just bought this like at maybe Ace Hardware or one of the farm stores or something like that. And then this one was just something that was here in the garage when we moved in. So I just kind of used what I had. That's certainly something that's always good to do around the farm or the homestead. This one, of course, is definitely well known and one of the best, if not the best, I'll say, for gardeners and homesteaders, farmers, anything you're doing with your garden. It has several important functionalities. I mentioned the functions a few minutes ago, but it might not look like it because it looks like it's made out of tarp material, but it does actually let water through. It's designed to be able to do that. So it lets water through, it's breathable, but still allows for some of those other benefits that I mentioned before. So that's a pretty amazing fabric. It's basically just an all-around great thing to use. Also, if you notice, these greenish blue lines in it are helpful for gardeners planting a lot of things in rows, right? It gives you a guide, which is super helpful if you're trying to cover a large area like this. Gives you a guide of where to poke your holes, etc. The way that you want to make holes in this when you are about to plant something is you actually burn a hole into it, or I've tried cutting it out with scissors as well and then singeing the edges because it will fray at the edges or wherever you cut it. You're going to get little frilly pieces hanging off of it, and that kind of like a loose thread on a shirt. If you pull on those or the wind pulls at those, then it'll just continue to kind of unravel it. So I'll just walk over and show you that right now since I'm talking about it. But I use those little fire starters that you get at the store to just burn holes in them. That was very slow. Something I learned from another Homestead channel, though, to burn it with, I think, a blowtorch is what they use, or I'm not sure. One of those little handheld things that I'm probably going to look into getting to this year because it's faster and easier. But all of these holes that I made last year, I did that one at a time, one by one, with this long stick Bic lighter type things. Or I use scissors because the scissors in a way were a little bit faster, but then if you don't burn the edges, it frays. So here again, just to give you a close up, see what I did was you kind of burn a hole where you want it to start and then burn the edges around it to seal it. Now when you cut it and you don't do anything to seal it, you end up with this. Or on the very ends of the weed fabric, just because I didn't have time to sit there and singe them all across the edges of all of this fabric, they are fraying at the very ends too. Thanks for coming along with me today again, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and try to finish a third row here and then get out of here for the day. It's almost 6 o'clock and I'm physically whipped, hungry again. So it's time to stop for the day. But again, thank you for stopping by and joining us. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share my videos, share the channel. That's what helps us grow here. And we'll see you next time at Go and Grow Homestead. Have a good day.